I'm 79. I don't say that for sympathy. I say it because when you reach this age, people stop asking what you plan to do next. They start speaking to you as if everything important is already decided. I'm talking to you because time is short for me and because it still feels long to you. That difference matters more than you think. I didn't come here to inspire you. I came because there are things you only see clearly when there's no room left to fix them. And once you see them, they don't let you rest. The lie I believed was simple, and that's why it was so dangerous. I believed work was the responsible choice, not passion, not people. Work. I didn't wake up one day and decide to give my life to a job. It happened quietly, step by step, disguised as maturity. Every time I chose work, I told myself I was being adult. I told myself this was what serious people did, that this was how you earned respect. I believed that providing was love, that showing up with money at the end of the month mattered more than showing up on time at the dinner table. That exhaustion was proof of commitment. When I missed moments, I explained it away. I said I was doing it for them, for the family, for the future. And because no one challenged me, the lie settled in deeper. My parents were proud. They spoke about me like I had made it. They never asked if I was happy. They asked if I was secure. My friends admired the discipline. They joked about my long hours. But there was respect underneath it. Being busy made me look important. My employer noticed. They rewarded reliability, not presence at home. They praised availability, not balance. Every signal around me confirmed the same message: keep going. So I did. I ignored the quiet discomfort that followed me home. The feeling that something was off, but not urgent enough to address. I learned how to silence that feeling by telling myself there would be time later. Later became my favorite word. Later I'd rest. Later I'd reconnect. Later I'd enjoy what I was building. I didn't see that later was just a way to avoid choosing. What made the lie convincing was that it didn't feel like a lie. It felt practical. It felt safe. No one pulled me aside and warned me. No one said, "This has a cost." They just watched me succeed. So I kept saying yes. Yes to overtime. Yes to responsibility. Yes to postponing the parts of life that didn't have deadlines. And because everyone around me nodded along, I never stopped to ask myself the one question that mattered. What am I trading away to keep this going? By the time I thought to ask it, the answer was already gone. After a while, the days stopped feeling separate. They blended together into one long routine. Morning came, not because I was rested, but because the alarm went off. I woke up early even when I didn't need to. Habit took over where intention used to be. I dressed without thinking, ate without tasting, left the house already focused on what was waiting for me. The drive to work became invisible. Same roads, same turns. I couldn't tell you what I saw along the way because I wasn't really there. At work, I knew exactly who I was supposed to be. Competent, dependable, calm. I learned how to speak in a way that sounded confident even when I felt nothing at all. Meetings repeated themselves. The same problems framed as new. The same conversations with slightly different people. I stopped asking why we were doing things a certain way. I focused on getting through the day without falling behind. I told myself I was busy. Busy explained everything. Busy excused my absence. Busy made it unnecessary to look too closely at my own life. Years passed without ceremony, not in big leaps, but in small, forgettable increments. One promotion led to another. More responsibility, more pressure, more justification for staying late. My calendar filled up, but nothing on it belonged to me. Every hour was spoken for, every decision already made. At home, I was physically present and mentally elsewhere. I answered questions while checking my phone. I listened just enough to respond, not enough to understand. Meals were rushed. Conversations were postponed. Even rest felt like something I had to earn. I missed birthdays and told myself there would be another. I skipped weekends and promised I'd make it up later. I learned how to apologize quickly and move on. At the time, it didn't feel like neglect. It felt necessary. That's what made it so easy to continue. There was no single moment where I thought, this is wrong. There was just a gradual dulling of awareness. Life didn't fall apart. It faded into the background. And because nothing was obviously broken, I never thought to stop. The moment everything changed didn't arrive the way people imagine these things happen. There was no collapse, no dramatic scene, no sudden realization that split my life into a before and after. It came quietly, in a place I had been many times before, doing something I treated as routine. It was a medical appointment I almost postponed because of work. I remember sitting in the waiting room, scrolling through messages, answering things that felt urgent at the time. I was still thinking like someone who believed there would always be another week, another month, another year to deal with whatever mattered later. When my name was called, I stood up without concern, expecting a conversation I could file away and forget. The doctor spoke calmly, evenly, without emotion. He explained my condition, what it meant, what could and could not be done, and how time would look from here on out. He didn't soften it, and he didn't dramatize it. He spoke the way professionals do when they've delivered the same news many times before. What stayed with me wasn't fear. It was clarity. For the first time, I understood that the timeline I had been assuming didn't exist. The future I had been postponing life for was no longer guaranteed, and the work I had given everything to had no place in what was coming next. There would be no final promotion that made it worth it. No moment where someone sat me down and thanked me for the sacrifices I had made. When the appointment ended, I walked to my car and sat there longer than necessary. I didn't turn the engine on. I didn't check my phone. I just sat with the understanding that my career, the thing I had centered my life around, would not follow me into whatever time I had left. The titles would stay behind. The long hours would stay behind. The sacrifices I kept telling myself would pay off someday would stay exactly where they were. I realized, with a kind of quiet certainty, that I was already being replaced in small ways, and that the system I had been loyal to would continue without interruption. Nothing had exploded. Nothing had ended that day. But something irreversible had happened. I could no longer pretend that there would be time later to rebalance what I had ignored. The clock hadn't started ticking louder. It had simply stopped being theoretical. The reckoning didn't arrive all at once. It settled in slowly, in quiet moments when there was nothing left to distract me. It came in the spaces where work used to fill every gap, and I found myself sitting with memories I had never given proper attention to before. I began replaying ordinary moments that I had dismissed as unimportant at the time. Evenings when I stayed late at the office while conversations continued without me at home. Phone calls I rushed through because I was tired or preoccupied. Weekends I postponed because Monday always felt closer than it actually was. What hurt wasn't the absence of grand gestures or dramatic failures. It was the accumulation of small choices that felt reasonable when they were made. I remembered birthdays I skipped with casual apologies, promising to make it up later. I remembered how often I told people I would be there next time, assuming next time was guaranteed. Some relationships didn't end with arguments or distance. They simply thinned. Invitations came less often. Conversations grew shorter. Eventually, silence replaced expectation. At the time, I barely noticed. Now, the absence is unmistakable. There are questions I never asked my parents, because I assumed there would always be another visit, another chance to sit and listen. There are stories about my children's lives that I only know in fragments, because I wasn't fully present when they were unfolding. There are parts of myself that never developed because they didn't fit into the life I was maintaining. None of these things can be revisited or repaired. There is no apology that reopens time, no explanation that restores moments that were missed. The realization is not dramatic or self-pitying. It is simply final. When I look back now, I don't see a life ruined by one mistake. I see a life quietly redirected, choice by choice, until the path back disappeared. The realization, when it finally settled, was almost uncomfortable in how simple it was. There was no complexity to it, no hidden insight that required intelligence or experience to understand. What mattered had been obvious all along, and I had managed to look past it for decades. What mattered was not the work itself, and not the recognition that came with it. It wasn't the sense of being needed by an organization that functioned perfectly well without me once I stepped back. It was attention, presence, and the decision to be fully involved in the lives unfolding around me, even when that involvement came at a cost. I had convinced myself that sacrifice was noble as long as it was productive. I believed that giving my energy to something measurable was more responsible than giving it to moments that couldn't be tracked or rewarded. The truth is that the things I sacrificed were the only parts of life that couldn't be replaced. The approval I worked for disappeared the moment I stopped producing. The respect I thought I had earned turned out to be conditional. What remained were the consequences of absence, and those were not shared or acknowledged by anyone else. If you are listening to this and thinking that your situation is different, that your work has a purpose that justifies the delay, I understand that reasoning because it was mine. If you tell yourself that you are only in this phase temporarily, that you will rebalance when things settle down, that is exactly the story I repeated to myself year after year. Time does not interrupt you to ask if you are ready. It does not warn you that the window is narrowing. It allows you to believe you are in control right up until the point where you realize you are not. The distance between where you are now and where I am feels vast. That distance shrinks without announcement. One day, the things you assumed were waiting for you may no longer be there, and the reasons you postponed them will no longer matter. I want to be clear about something before this ends. I'm not speaking from a place of hope or regret that expects resolution. I'm speaking from acceptance. There is no rebalancing left for me, no opportunity to trade what I built for what I gave up. The shape of my life is set, and all that remains is to understand it honestly. I'm not asking you to make drastic changes or dramatic decisions. I'm not suggesting that walking away will lead to fulfillment or happiness. Life doesn't work that way. What I am saying is simpler and harder to ignore. Whatever you are postponing is being postponed at a cost you don't feel yet. The things you believe will wait for you are not guaranteed to do so. People change, relationships thin, energy fades, and opportunities to be present quietly close without ceremony. For me, those doors are already closed. I don't say that with bitterness, only with clarity. The life I chose is the life I get to reflect on, not revise. For you, that moment still feels distant enough to dismiss. That is the danger. Distance creates comfort, and comfort delays decisions until they are no longer available. So before you move on from this, before you return to whatever you were doing, sit with one honest question. Not tomorrow. Not when things calm down. Now. What are you giving your best years to, and what will remain when those years are gone? Because one day, you may ask that question when there is no longer time to answer it.